Welcome to the next of the monthly reading wrap-ups. So this will be a long video, hopefully, of all of the books that I read this month. And so the goal is about 4 fiction books. Last month I talked about 2 books, so we'll see how this month goes. But for right now, I just finished my first one, and today's the 11th, so maybe I can get more done. We'll find out. So this is the 12th book in the series, and the series is A Bake Shop Mystery by Ellie Alexander. This one is Chilled to the Cone, now serving a cold case of murder. Which I find kind of ironic, because I don't know, this isn't how I was like exactly picturing the vibe, because it sounded like it was an outdoor kitchen, actually. And this looks very indoor. Unless it's like this little cart, but it sounded like that. Anyways, is that the point? No. So this book was definitely better than the last one. If you watched last month's wrap up, I talked about Nothing But Trouble, and I didn't love that one. This one we went back to the usual status quo, and I liked it. So if you couldn't guess by the title and also just the series in general, so Jules decides she's gonna open up a temporary little cart thing. I don't know. It sounded, to me, it sounded like the end of a building. And the way I was picturing it was like kind of covered, but kind of not. And it had like the counter service, like you would see at like the places for like quick serve at like Disney and Universal, and even like some of like the Disney cruise places that they go to where they have the food out. I was kind of picturing something like that, small, but like just the little kitchen area. It's covered technically, but it's also like if it was a bad rainstorm, would you need to pull down like some blinds or something to kind of protect the equipment? That's how I was picturing it. And then it had like some little garden seating area around. But anyway, so she decides to do this. They're working on fixing up the place so that during a little bit of the season they can do like Tort Part 2 and serve ice cream. And of course, it's a murder mystery book, so what happens? Murder. And thus, Jules solves another case. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. I actually really loved this. Again, compared to the last book, I did not like that one. But this one was pretty good. Personally, I wasn't so sure about the opening a second location. I was like, oh my god, Jules, what are you doing? Why? And then it slowly started to grow on me a little bit. And the subplots of all of these different characters, I actually really enjoyed seeing them getting to move up in their own character worlds a little bit. Of everyone's kind of working on their own stuff, even the like random supporting characters. Andy is off doing his own thing, and Sterling and his little subplot he had going on. Like all of them just had stuff going on. And it kind of moved them forward in this book. Of course, Jules' sub-story, hers moved up a bit as well, which I really love the ending for that. Overall, it was just a really good read. I read it in about 2 days, which that's how fiction's supposed to go. You just jump in and you want to finish it. At least for me. Like, that's how fast they need to go. And if it's taking me a long time, I usually don't like it. Or I'm trying to drag it out because I don't want it to end. I do have that sometimes too. But for the most part, if I'm enjoying it, I just want to get through it and enjoy it and just la-la, and then done and move on with my life. And that was this book. So I do want to have a spoiler section, so I'll put timestamps to jump ahead, or if you don't care, you're gonna be spoiled. So for this one, I think this was the first of any of the cozy mysteries that I've read that I actually figured out the killer. It was a little obvious this time. I don't know if it's just like pattern recognition and like, you know, I've read a lot of these now, so you kind of know. But this one, he just seemed a little too obvious. And so the fact that it was Dean, and he was just such, like, a douchebag the entire time, it kind of made sense. And he was acting super sketch the whole time. And sometimes I could kind of see maybe it could be Hunter. Sometimes I could see maybe Addie. But honestly, usually it was Dean. I was like, he's just too sketch. And he's a little too not trustworthy, where the other ones are like, just kind of a-holes, but like not murderers level. And so I kind of was a little impressed that I actually caught it. But again, I don't read these with the intention of like, I gotta find out who did it. I don't care that much. I'm here for a fun time, and fun to me is not trying to figure out the plot before it happens. I'm just here for the ride. Like, I don't really care. And so that's how I always view fiction. I don't really want to be like, what is the theme of the book? I don't care. I'm just here for a story, guys. And so, yeah, like the fact that I figured it out this time was a little like, look at me go. But that, I don't usually care. I kind of was disappointed that with Lars, she's like, well, we'll just have him do like some community service with his dad supervising, because he's very great at supervising that kid, obviously, I guess. Like, as a parent, I feel like maybe you should know that your own child, and like, what went wrong for them to be breaking into your own shop and stealing? Like, that's not a community service fix it situation. Like, he's stealing because like bikes are expensive, not even including the electric bikes. Just a normal bike, they are expensive. I haven't bought one in like 10 years, and when I went to an actual bike shop to buy mine, they are expensive. So the fact that it's like, oh, well, you know, well, it's time to take community service. It's like, no, you need to press charges. This kid needs to learn reality. And he's not a kid. It's like a teenager. So he's old enough to understand consequences. Let the consequences exist. Because his attitude is, there's not going to be a consequence. Oh my God, there's not a consequence. And so that was a bit disappointing. And so, I don't know, I sometimes feel like if the author does that as just like a way to irk the reader, or if it's like a try and just like, oh, well, it's cozy, so of course. I don't know, I was annoyed at Lars. I was like, he should definitely like do some jail time, actually learn some lessons, pay a substantial fine, something. Community service just doesn't, and again, with the dad babysitting, maybe have like an actual law enforcement officer babysit, something. That one was like, really? The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the Sky character. I feel like this is one of those times where I kind of see where the editor world would be like, just cut this character. He served nothing. It was like a very minor, maybe-ish, little potential other option of choice of who the murderer is. But it just felt like that entire character could not exist and the story would be fine. Like, all of the other characters kind of earn their place. Again, some of the background ones stay in the background. Andy, Rosa, I can't remember, Sequoia, I think is how it's pronounced, Marty. Like, there's a lot of characters that are very background. But this dude just felt really out of place and random. Like, why is he here? I get that he's supposed to be one of the suspects, but he wasn't that suspectful, to be honest. Like, why would this guy they're both homeless and they're friends, want to kill his friend? That makes no sense. There's no motive there. And he really didn't add anything to the story, and it's like, maybe this is where those editors are like, cut the character, kill your darling. Because I probably would have told you to cut him, because he just didn't add anything to the story at all. Unless he's like going to be a recurring character later on, it was a completely pointless character. So those are my thoughts on Chilled to the Cone. I will see you in a few seconds when I hopefully read another one. I have a sneaking suspicion, much like last month, I will have read 2 not witchcraft books. So yeah, here we are. I read another one, and it took the majority of the month. Today is the 22nd, and I'm still trying to get to the end of my own next book, and also still reading a witchcraft book and getting that up every single day, plus a bonus one on Patreon every week. So I don't know that I'm gonna have another one going up in this video, but if I do, I'll let you know. But maybe by then I'll be done breaking out like I'm 15, because stress. And when I'm stressed, you know what I do? I do this. I touch, and then it makes it worse. It's great, you know? Like, isn't there supposed to be like a second puberty in your 20s? Am I there? Is that what's going on? I'm just never getting over acne. Is that the thing? Is that the point? No. But it's just bothering me, because this one's just like, why? And it doesn't do anything, and it's just there. I think it's like the hormonal ones where like, it doesn't do anything. You just get this god-awful bump for like weeks, and then it does nothing and eventually goes away. And you're like, thanks for that. That's what it feels like. Anyways, so I listened to Patrick Stewart's Making It So, and I loved it. So I listened to the audiobook, which is how I would recommend you consume that book, because he reads it. and it's awesome. And at first I was a little bit like, oh my god, because it's like this dude in his 80s reading and talking about his life when he was like under 10. And you're like, oh my god, you're getting old. Like just the voice, you know, as people age, it just changes. You're like, but Patrick, I don't want you to get old. And then inevitably, it feels like he kind of got less old, ironically, as he got through his life in more like recent times. He got a little bit more confident in his voice, but at the beginning it was like, oh, you sound old. But it did eventually kind of, or you just get used to it. Maybe that was it too. But it's like almost 19 hours long of an audiobook, but it's so worth it. It's so good. If you don't know what it is, basically it walks you through Patrick Stewart's life as early as he can pretty much remember, all the way up until like now. And so he talked, like it ends with him finishing up on Picard, the series that just finished, I guess, and kind of his goals and stuff, a little bit of what he's doing now. But ironically, there's a lot more detail in the past, like him reflecting on his childhood, which was like, whoa. Oh my god, I would not want to be him. That sounds awful. Like there's no, like, you couldn't do any, it felt like he didn't have plumbing, to be perfectly honest. Like, it sounds like there kind of was, but it was like iffy. Like, you could only have bath water for like you had to reuse the bath water for multiple people, which is just like, ugh. And like you had to siphon the water out, which is weird. It's like, is there no like plumbing going on? Questions. I don't necessarily need the answers, but what? And like, to go to the bathroom was down at the bottom of the street in a brick house that did have flushing toilets, and you're like, oh my god, no. Like reading it, well, reading, it was like, I am sitting here in such a privileged life in comparison, because he was amazed at like having a front and backyard, and I'm over here like, this is so squishy. To be fair, I grew up on 5-acre like farm lots, so you had space, and now I can see my neighbor, what specific utensil they are putting down on their table. Just chilling while I'm like washing dishes in the sink, you know? You're looking out the window and you're like, ah, look at you putting down the fork instead of a spoon. Like, it's ridiculous. I hate being that close. And it's not even as bad as like in the UK. The houses are like right there. It's just, it is an actual city. I like suburb life where you got some space, but not rural, where you're all on your own and you got well water and a septic tank and propane delivered. Hate that. Hard pass. And you might have electricity. Like, that middle ground, that's where I love to be. But yeah, listening to his life story was insane, and how he constantly kept going back to theater rather than just movies. But like, it took so long for him to get to like where I knew him, because there was so much where it was like, okay, in England doing plays, do I know any of these? No. The hyper focus on Shakespeare, wow, that was feeling very Ellie Alexander. Because if you haven't read her Big Shot Mystery, they are obsessed with Shakespeare. And so it was like this weird, like, hey, you don't know each other, but this camaraderie is happening right now, and this is weird. And their love of Shakespeare between the two of them, despite not knowing each other, was wild. But I don't actually care about Shakespeare. It's like, okay, and not my thing. I'm sure I appreciate it, but also like when I read it in school, it was boring. I preferred like not old writing. Even Charles Dickens was getting rough, and like Mark Twain was a little rough. It's not my thing. But him going through so much theater, and it took, I want to say it was like 14 to 16 hours in before we get to Picard. And I thought that was going to be real soon, and that was going to be the chunk of the book, because it's called Making It So, right? But no, it takes a long time to get there. And it's like, once you start, you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, it's gonna be Picard, it's gonna be Picard. Because I did like him. He is my favorite of the captains. And it's wild to hear about how he was like so dramatic when he started, and then kind of calmed down a while later. But like, it's insane how much random that you're like, I did not know this about you. And you know, a little part of me does wonder like how much was glossed over and a little romanticized of like these famous celebrity dudes who just leave their families and cheat on their wives, and you're like, game, like that part was like, I would love to hear the other perspective. Like, because the kids were pissed, and apparently they're like still pissed about it years later, which makes me wonder how much truth was in that. You know, it'd be nice to have a little bit more detail, but you know, it's also just, I guess, how people are when you get rich. But I don't know, it's like, if you were living in different countries, could you make it work, or would you just give up before you like start cheating on your partner? I feel like that's always an option, because even if you like someone, you actually have free will to say you don't want to go off with them. That's always an option. You can do that. That part I was kind of like, eh. But on a whole, I can't help but love Patrick. He's just so fun. He's one of those people I would love to meet, and I would love to say that I wouldn't be starstruck, but I'm just socially awkward anyways. So I'm gonna need him to be the confident one and just gently guide the conversation till my anxiety can calm down enough to where I can become a human again, because I have anxiety. And I don't know, it was cool to hear about his life story and stuff. And I think the biggest thing is that I was like on the last like half hour. It's like right when like he is talking about, you know, like his brother's getting sick and getting older, and kind of just the wrapping up of the book and stuff. And so I finished listening for the day, and then I was just on my Spotify, and in the like DJX thing, which I don't particularly love because half the time it's just the same exact songs as in my liked list, so it's like, what is your purpose? Or it goes off the absolute rails, and I'm like, I don't have anything in this genre. Why? Anyways, so I was listening, and it popped up Nightmare Before Christmas, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. And then I looked, and then it said Patrick Stewart, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? Literally, I am 28 going on 29. It is my favorite movie. Literally, did not plan this. Favorite movie. Like, I love Nightmare Before Christmas, but I haven't done a whole lot of like researching into it. I think you can love something and not be like the mega nerd fan about it and have to know every single detail, but at the same time, I feel like I should have known this. I should have recognized, but I did not. He's the narrator. The beginning, the opening scene, and then the ending, which I don't think is actually in the movie, but it's on the soundtrack, and I've listened to the soundtrack, I think, more than the movie itself at this point, where it wraps up and it's like with his little skeleton children, and it's just like, oh my god. It's like, do you remember that night so many years ago? And you're like, oh my god. And it was Patrick Stewart. It was Picard. Picard was reading in my favorite movie, and I never knew it. So anyways, I was nerding out at that point, and now I'm really hyper-focused back onto my movie, and I gotta rewatch it and find all the documentaries and be like, was there a behind the scenes with Patrick Stewart? Because honestly, when I was obsessed with it as a kid, I didn't know any of the actors, and so like, I always assumed that because Danny Elfman did so many characters, I thought he was the narrator and just was like mimicking the accent and like just doing another character, not Picard. And yeah, it was good. And also, if you've never listened to Picard, that's his name, obviously. He hates that, I think, a little bit. He wants to be known for other things. It's like, I'm sorry, you just did such a good captain. Patrick did a fantastic reading of A Christmas Carol, and he talks about it a little bit at the end. There's like, I think like 3 to maybe 5 minutes of a snippet of it. I got to listen to the full thing in high school with one of my professor teacher dudes. Actually ended up being our officiant, ironically, many years later, but that guy, he actually had us listen to Patrick Stewart reading A Christmas Carol. Yeah, I always get them two mixed up. I always want to say it's A Christmas Story, and then it's A Christmas Carol, and then back and forth. I don't know why my brain wants to swap them. Anyways, A Christmas Carol, and he does such a good job. It is like one of the best narrations ever for that story, and I love that one. And I also love Author to Author that Charles Dickens wrote, because he got paid by the word, so they're extra wordy to get paid. And it's like, dude, same. So much same. You know what, if I could do that, yeah. I just do it by volume now. Just all the books, one of them. So anyways, those are my thoughts on Making It So. I absolutely loved it. It is so worth the listen to. It is long, just plan accordingly, because it takes a while. It's almost 19 hours. It was just shy of 19. It's a lot, so just prepare. But it's so good. And if I read another book, I will check in. I have a feeling I'm not, but I never say never. I still got a whole nother week. You never know. But if not, I will see you all next time. Hopefully I'll do more videos next month as I get back into writing. This month I just was in a funk. So hopefully next month I will get back into it. And until next time, thank you for coming along for the so many books that I read this month. And until next time, I'll see y'all soon.